So, in 2018, when I was out with a friend, he said to me, "Are you looking forward to Taken Down?" And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "It's a new Irish crime show from the makers of Love Hate." I said, "What?" And he said he had had the same conversation with many people and no one seemed to know about it. A few weeks later, we met up again. He mentioned Taken Down. Again, I said, "What's that?" We had basically the same interaction again, only this time I'd gotten the message. So I tuned in the first night it broadcast, watched it week to week till it ended, and I have never had a conversation with anyone who has seen it since. Every time someone would bring up Love Hate, I would say, "But did you watch Taken Down?" And no one had. And then when the first trailer came out for Kin and people started saying, "Would it be another Love Hate?" I'd go, "Well, have you watched Taken Down?" And no one had. And then once I started making my YouTube and TikTok videos about my Love Hate rewatch, I got plenty of comments mentioning Kin. I think there was even one or two that mentioned Dublin Murders. None mentioned Taken Down. Now this is all a very long-winded way of saying, I'll concede that this title and thumbnail are quite clickbaity, but if I called the video Taken Down Rewatch, nobody would watch it, which is a shame because I think this show's brilliant. While the Love Hate rewatch videos had full spoilers and were made for people who had seen the show already, I don't think I should do that with Taken Down, because there's clearly not enough people who've seen this show. So, despite having been out for years, I will speak about this show in a non-spoiler fashion where possible, and then clearly signpost spoilers as they arise. Just as a heads up, as opposed to non-spoilers and spoilers being in two distinct categories, I've got a couple of signposted spoilers sprinkled throughout the video, so I just wanted to flag that if the pause button is not immediately to hand. Just in case you're someone like me who leaves YouTube playing on the other side of the room while you do literally anything except exercise. That being said, however, I had the experience of going into this show blind and watching it slowly unfold, and I do think that's the best way to go in. Something that's revealed at the end of episode 2 is on the blurb of the DVD, and even I think that undercuts the experience if you know it in advance. So yes, I would say before you read up anything else about it or look at the rest of this video, watch it. If you liked Love Hate, there's a good chance you'll like it too. It's not on RTE Player anymore, so I bought the DVD. I'll leave a link in the description for where I got it. It was like a tenner, and I screen grabbed all my footage from the DVD, which is why all the clips are in standard def. Just for that reason. Not because I'm bad at this or anything. Oh, and to anybody who gets misty-eyed and nostalgic about buying DVDs, don't. When this arrived, disc 2 had fallen out of the holder in transit, so the second disc was scratched and it skipped in episode 5. The past was shite. Anyway, I'll go into this in more detail when I make the Kin video, but that show did get a lot of comparisons to Love Hate, and a lot of people complained that they didn't like it as much. But I have to say, Taken Down does scratch that Love Hate itch better for reasons a more media literate person could put into words. But for the things I can point to, it's the same writer, the same director, the same producer, and the choices of actors they reuse from Love Hate are all interesting compared to the roles they had before. Taken Down also benefits from the fact that, no doubt due to Love Hate's success, the creators are given more space to realise their vision, whilst also being more experienced. Compared to Love Hate's first season, the episode count is higher, with 6 compared to 4, and a noticeably higher budget. Definitely this show looks on a par, if not better, than Love Hate's 5th season, which was the best the show had ever looked. And there are numerous scenes where the director David Caffrey is allowed to cook, so to speak. But casting and directing aside, clearly the real appeal of this show is Stuart Carolan as a writer. And this program further illustrates why you don't want Love Hate Season 6. This writer had more stories to tell, and a new show gives him more freedom to tell them. Regarding the Love Hate connection, maybe there was a conversation about this show happening in the same universe. Certainly both shows use the same Garda station, which I believe is in Drumcondra, and perhaps you could have taken the cops from Love Hate and slotted them in here. But I think it's for the best that's not what happened, as I think rather than our mind being on the story that's unfolding, we'd be waiting for a character we recognise to turn up, focusing on what it isn't, Love Hate Season 6, instead of what it is, something quite different. And this is what makes it a compelling rewatch, as well as being good on the first go, because of its genre. It's a whodunit.
Whodunit? What do you mean whodunit? We know who done it. The rhino done it.
The subject matter of Love Hate, i.e. gangsters, can lend itself to pretty trashy stuff, but once Love Hate got past its season 1 revenge story, the framing of it was quite serious and almost documentary-like. Characters didn't have grand reintroductions when new seasons began, and there was nothing fanciful or romantic about the criminals, like a Sunday morning truce from gang activity or a Don acquiescing to favours on his daughter's wedding day. With Taken Down, a murder mystery is quite pulpy and all the better for it, but Taken Down takes this lurid template and applies it to a very politically sensitive topic. Direct provision. This is a murder mystery in a direct provision centre, yet it has all the tropes of the genre you know and love. It has the detective who's good at their job, but their personal life is a disaster.
Jack, I'm afraid your house is on fire.
There's red herrings, there's the suspects you like, but who just can't get their story straight and you feel for. There's the suspects you despise and want to see nailed to the cross.
If you didn't kill Jackie, why did you lie about knowing her?
Are you married?
No.
Well, think about it for a moment. Just try and find a place where your brain lives and stick this up it.
Now, one might think a genre which at times is so sensational might not be a good match with such a recent and delicate subject matter as direct-to-vision, but it's a match made in heaven. For example, if your accommodation in a country is on shaky ground, and there are many who would wish to see you gone, it brings a whole new dimension to the murder mystery trope of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. The detective story element also gives the show a 3-act structure, meaning the story has a place to end. Because of this, the story's ending isn't hinged on answering the question of direct provision, nor does it attempt to offer any solutions. The detective is doing her job, and it just so happens to bring her to a direct provision centre on this day. In a 2016 interview looking back at Love Hate, Carol Ann said, "You can say more in one line than in having crowbarred in some social commentary." Not to say that Carol Ann doesn't have strong feelings about the topic.
You're not allowed to cook. It's kind of, canteen
Yes.
kind of scenario where meal times at certain times. It's about not being able to cook for your children.
Yes.
It's a big thing.
Yeah.
No access to life beyond this place. It's a really like a prison scenario.
Brief spoilers for the ending, but the show doesn't end with Benny, Isaiah and Oba getting new accommodation, and the last scene is a busload of new arrivals. Cathartic though it may have been to see them get some comfort, real life is seldom like that. This is just an episode of these people's lives that you get to witness, and our role ends, much like the Gardaí's role ends, when the killer is caught. And that's what makes it a good rewatch. Like with so many of these stories, you watch it again from the start, you look out for the clues and see how the signs were there all along, the essence of a great whodunit.
I mean, it's got suspense, lots of killings, and a bit of Humpty Dumpty.
Now this sort of story, a more conventional one with a beginning, middle and end, was only attempted once to my mind in Love Hate, with Darren's Revenge in the first season, and just to reiterate, I don't think it was particularly well done. Taking Down's ace in the hole is this is not solely Stuart Carlan's creation. Each episode is co-written by novelist Joe Spain, who's penned many Irish crime stories. Now I must confess I've actually not read any of these, so I can't speak on it from the perspective of someone who's familiar with her stuff. I'd love to see a video like this from someone who is. But having listened to a Ryan Tubridy interview, melding this genre with sore spots in Irish culture is something she's done in her novels, with subjects like the mother and baby home, in addition to also bringing the murder mystery to Dáil Éireann, based on her previous life working as an advisor to Pierce Doherty. But speaking without a foothold in her previous or subsequent work, what I can say is that this show absolutely succeeds at that area where Love Hate fell short, and it's safe to assume we can attribute that to her. Aside from that, areas of her influence on the writing are less clear to me, but there's one or two scenes which are quintessentially Carol Ann, such as this scene from an Addicts Anonymous meeting where you just feel like you've walked in on it. This is one scene which sums up something this show does that Love Hate didn't always have the space to do. If Love Hate was concerned with the perpetrators of crime in Dublin, Taken Down is much more concerned with the afflicted. Occasionally in Love Hate the perpetrators and the victims were one and the same, but for instance Love Hate showed the drugs arriving and being mixed, and it showed the gang collecting the proceeds from the running of a brothel, but it didn't always show you how the drugs affected people's lives, or how the women got to be in that position, apart of course from Debbie, who embodied both. Taken Down dwells a lot longer on the pain, the suffering and how it came about, but to talk about that I'd need to talk about the story of this show. The show begins with a woman, Abeni, having fled Nigeria with her two sons, Isaiah and Oba, getting to Dublin and being placed in accommodation she is told is temporary. 8 years pass and they're still here. One morning, the body of a resident of the centre, Esme, is found dead at the bus stop beside the centre. A Garda inspector named Jennifer Rooney is brought in to find the killer, and that is as much as I can say without giving away what I think is info you're better off starting the show not knowing. Come the second episode's end, it is revealed that this direct provision centre is being run in tandem with a brothel, with a custodian, Marvellous, who lacks Janet's bedside manner. Girls from the centre like Esme are trafficked. They're brought in and put to work, and, spoilers in a Sharish, they're put to work till they're deemed no longer fit to work. Afterwards, they're put in a van by a sinister character called Benjamin and sent elsewhere. And by the show's end, that question, where did they go, chillingly, remains unanswered. The reveal of the brothel is done brilliantly, I think, where Abene, who works as a cleaner there, steps off the bus in O'Connell Street, and we follow her down the alleyway as she walks into the city seedy underbelly. Now perhaps in a detail which is only amusing to sad sacks like me, the alley she walks down is Sackville Place, which, if you like Irish dance classics, is the site of Asylum Dance Club, footage of which has been used in conjunction with some incredible old club music. In fact, Asylum might be the pub they're referring to here.
So as far as we know, this is the premises. It's 1 or 2 buildings above and beside a closed down bar.
But putting that useless trivia aside, I would still hold up this scene as one of the standout moments from the series. By stepping onto a street known to us all and walking in real time into somewhere so far removed from many of us brings to life the tagline of the DVD, the city you know, the world you don't. Ugh. The resident of this centre we follow most closely, Abene, is consistently thwarted by it. She has traditional views of parenting, but she can't set her son's curfew when it's set by the centre. And the only opportunity she gets to cook for her sons is at her so-called place of work, as the residents have not legal status to work in Ireland. In the case of someone like Abene, this is her only option to make money, despite her clear willingness to work. Later on in the show, after she requests daytime work, she is left in charge of a salon. She's given a mandate to do as she wishes, read magazines and watch TV, but she resumes work as a cleaner. It's not the full extent of her abilities.
But you were a teacher, no?
Yes. I worked as a teacher in a junior secondary school.
But it's nothing compared to what the other women are doing, and they are procured by two characters performed by Love Hate alumni. The choice of Brian Gleeson and Jimmy Smallhorn is interesting to me because of the roles each had in Love Hate. In the case of Brian Gleeson, he had a starring role in the show when the show was at its most constrained. Huey is a character which I always thought was among the weakest in Love Hate, but not because of Gleeson as an actor, and he's given a much better character here with Wayne Deavy, the man left in charge of this centre. From the get-go, you just want to see him in cuffs. He's a man-child. He uses this wishy-washy language.
It's not 100%, but you know yourselves, more or less, you know? Not really, no.
He has an air of sleaze about him, and considering the place he works in, he is dangerously aloof and tone deaf.
Eve's from Syria. I think she's a Kurd. Not 100% certain, but I think she is. I know you don't experience down where you come from, but I've told you before, it's fairly commonplace in Ireland.
And embarrassingly enough, these are traits I could perhaps recognise within myself. But that's why you wouldn't catch me working in a place like this. Wayne is awful, but he's kind of lame. The real monster is the man with the company that works with the centre, Gar. Gar on paper deals with providing accommodation once visas are granted, and this is something he pulls off, but with devastating results. Accommodation here, which is meant for maybe only one family, is turned into a dormitory of sorts, if you could call it that, with all these bunk beds in the one room. Despite just the one loo for so many people, which outside of discomfort for tenants wreaks havoc on the plumbing, that will be bad enough. But he also oversees the brothel, the procuring of women, producing the tapes to be sent to their potential clients, and much like Jimmy Smallhorn's role in Love Hate, also doing the worst thing you can imagine. I'm not sure how this actor would take it if you said it to him in the street, but he is so adept at playing the worst men imaginable. I am not an Irish woman, in spite of what the kids in my neighbourhood may tell me, but after Love Hate, even I get a twang of fear when I see this guy on screen. The dread carries over from Love Hate and perhaps is more terrifying here, because not alone is he in the 6 episodes as opposed to 1, but come the show's end, spoilers on Corún Fo, he remains unbeknownst to the Gardaí. In the world of this show, he's still out there. This character is a vulture. In one scene, he makes reference to needing to quit drinking, and then we later see him at a meeting. Perhaps this is a genuine attempt to get better, only to get to the meeting's end to find out he was on the lookout for vulnerable people to exploit. He goes on little power trips like this scene where he decides he'll have a bit of fun with a Bene over a cup of tea.
Can I have a cup of tea?
I will make you a cup.
Nah, see. I won't have one. Go on, see. I will, eh? Nah, I won't.
He really is the one you want Rooney to catch, and she never does. As for Rooney, she of course is played by Lynn Raverty, who played Nadine in Love Hate. A character who, the closer the show got to ending, got more to say and became more fleshed out. Funnily enough, when you compare Rooney and Nadine, both are jaded, no-nonsense women from Dublin. It's just they both wound up on wildly divergent paths in life. Through Rooney we meet the team of Gardaí, and I think this show manages to realise the vision of what I think Caroline may have intended with the Gardaí in Love Hate's later seasons. As I outlined in my Love Hate rewatch vids, the Gardaí there, too little too late. Apart from Moynihan, they had too little screen time for us to really credibly root for them compared to Nidge's gang, and it was too late in the sense that the show had already been for a few seasons by the time they showed up. The Gardaí here, however, are much more fleshed out. And yes, there's tropey aspects like Don Wycherley's character of the boss who's concerned with budget overruns and optics.
Go on. But not 24/7, we're not made of money.
But the rest have a bit more to them. An observation I made of Love Hate was that all of the Garda characters were by and large presented as good people with little to no shades of grey. This show brings that in, but mercifully doesn't just have good cops and bad cops. The Gardaí in this show also had 2 actors who'd become familiar to us after having appeared in Charlie, with Gavin O'Connor as Mackin and Orla Fitzgerald as Niamh. Orla Fitzgerald was also the love interest in The Wind That Shakes the Barley, but you probably forgot about that if you, like me, hadn't rewatched it for about 15 years because of that pliers scene. The Niamh character is pretty much just a good Garda who's on the ball. Her one flaw is adultery really, but Gavin O'Connor brings the comic relief to the show. Love Hate had laughs, Taken Down has laugh. Generally speaking, there's 1 laugh per episode, but it's damn near always from Mackin.
It's just half a pizza there.
He initially seems a Harvey Bullock type, where he's dishevelled but noble. However, the sleaze does boil over towards the end, where while initially he is only set to visit the brothel undercover to observe, he does give in to temptation. The guy that I perhaps found most interesting was Sean Fox's character Fitzer, who starts off the show in the worst possible light, being far too heavy-handed and over the top with one of the residents of the centre, Samir, who subsequently takes their own life. However, in everything he does after that, he shows remorse and a willingness to do grunt work and to help the case, and even shows a bit of ingenuity by copying towards the end that Wayne Deafy had a second phone number. What the show gives you that you perhaps didn't get from Love Hate is more police work, watching the CCTV on a Dublin bus, tailing suspects around the Tara Street area, etc. But something this show does better than Love Hate is interrogation scenes. The thing about the Love Hate interrogation scenes was Nidge's gang was trained not to say anything.
You just can fuck off.
The scenes we get here just have more to them. The Garda scenes, along with the scenes at the Direct Provision Centre, are in keeping with a theme which runs throughout the show, which is of the system failing. There's a scene in the second episode where Rooney posits the idea of getting Tusla involved, and it just fills you with dread with the idea of another inefficient government body. And to wrap things up, I'll talk about the most spoilery thing about the show: who is the killer? Watching the show again this time, knowing Marvellous was the killer, I wasn't necessarily beating myself up for not spotting it, because as worked up as the Gardaí get over Deavy, there's still Gar and Benjamin and Toby. Gar and Benjamin are right villains, and Toby does seem unhinged. But with Marvellous, there's little clues in her first scene. She definitely seems icy. But as well, her relationship with Benjamin is gradually revealed as being very toxic. She clearly likes him more than he likes her. The means by which they discover she's the killer, where the killer has to have been left-handed, and they spot her signing her name with her left hand. At the time, I remember thinking that was a bit hokey, but watching it again all these years later, didn't bother me. Certainly better anything than I could come up with. And anyways, when the show aired originally and it ended the way it did, with Gar remaining on the loose and with those girls disappearing into the van never to be seen again, with Wayne holding onto his job despite having tampered with evidence and lied to the Gardaí, and with Abene and her son still being in the centre, I wasn't 100% sure if we were done. I was open to the idea of a second series. Watching it again, this is perfect as a mini-series. Yes, it doesn't wrap things up neatly with a little bow, but to reiterate, life is seldom like that. So I do tend to admire shows that don't succumb to that. As for Taken Down, while it's overlooked now, there's so many talented people involved in this thing that I have no doubt it'll find its way to more audiences as time goes by. And when the lists are made of the best dramas made in this country, this is in there with them if you ask me. I am on Gap Year Forever, and this has been my Taken Down rewatch.